Synergy, synergy, synergy. We are back. And for the second part, we're still talking about Jaria. We're still talking about the Jamaica reggae industry. We're talking about the Caribbean music market. I'm giving you an update. You just heard from Don McDowell, who is the director of CALM. And I hope you were listening to what CALM is because it's one long acronym. And now we have the pleasure and the honor of having Abishai Hoilett, who is an artist manager, founder director of Bebel Rock Music, co-manager of Kabaka Pyramid as well as Coral Fire, and a label rep for Ghetto Youth International. Abishai, greetings, and welcome to Synergy.
Hi, Andrea. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
It's our pleasure. And so Abishai is also the chair of Jaria's Reggae Month. And Don shared with us, what Reggae Month was, an overview. So now tell us a little bit about your overall work, Abishai, in the Jamaica music industry before we even get into, Reggae Month.
Well, I believe in my introduction you kind of said most of it. I'm not one to speak too much about myself, so I'm an artist manager, as you said. I am a founding director at Bebel Rock Music, which is a label and artist management company. And also I do some work with the Ghetto Youth International family.
Wow, very nice. And so how long have you been a member of Jaria?
Jaria, since about 2010, 2011.
Very nice. And in that capacity, what roles have you held and what have you done while you've been part of for 9 years of Jaria? We know that you're also the chair of Reggae Month, but did you hold other roles prior to becoming chair?
Yes. So it's first of all, it's been a great experience being a part of Jaria and being able to play a part in the growing the music industry and creating a bigger voice for us. I've been just a regular member, pay my dues, join committees and lend my voice to different issues. I then joined the board initially as a youth rep, the youth rep member of the board. From there, I transitioned into the Reggae Month chair about 5 years ago, which I currently hold that position on the Jaria board as the chair of the Reggae Month committee.
Wow, huge. So you have had long-standing involvement and you've seen the organization grow and really work with them in various capacities. Good stuff. Good stuff. So, you just said you are currently the chair, and as chair of the 4 of the past 5 Reggae Months and now the current one for 2020, which I think is going to be amazing. I know we're not going to let out all the cats out of the bag in terms of what's going on, but what do you think are some of the accomplishments of your committee? Because I know enough things have happened in the last, 4 or 5 years with Reggae Month. What do you see as some of the greatest accomplishments of that committee?
Well, I wouldn't want to narrow it down to just the last 4 or 5 months because as a committee, as Jaria, we have worked tirelessly since the inception of Reggae Month to grow Reggae Month as not just a product but a time of celebration, especially in Kingston back home. And we see now where the product has garnered international recognition, and it's a time that everybody looks forward to, especially in Kingston. The vibes, the energy is like no other time of the year, with the shows, with the events, with the different forums that we keep. It's a special time, and I think it was something really needed on the landscape. Before that, we didn't really have a time where we recognized and celebrated the contribution of reggae, not only to Jamaica, but to the world. And with February being the birthdays of like Bob Marley, of Dennis Brown, people like Bunny Ruggs, other luminaries in the reggae industry, then it creates a even more exciting and special period of celebration that we all look forward to. So I'll start there. In the last 4 to 5 years, we've seen where Jamaica, for instance, Kingston has been given Music City designation by UNESCO, and a big part of that has been the contribution of Reggae Month. Of course, we can't take full Sorry, let me do over that part. Just continue talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. My apologies. Yeah, we can't take full credit for that. Of course, the cultural superpower that Kingston is. We just managed to package some of that in the month of February and help to magnify the world's eyeglass on Jamaica a little bit. And so, we see now things like the Jaria Honor Awards, that annual event happen each year during Reggae Month for the last 10 years. And it's where we come and we celebrate some of the biggest contributors to the music and to the industry that sometimes go unheralded, and people might forget their names from time to time. And so another big accomplishment, I think, of Reggae Month has been helping to keep the names of some of these people alive and spread their legacy even more. So yeah, it's been wonderful to watch the product grow. And to see more and more people get involved, and we see corporate Jamaica coming on board more as well. So it's been great.
It really has, and touche, and congratulations, because yes, I mean, I think you just framed Reggae Month so wonderfully, Abishai. And as somebody who does not live on the island but frequents the island, sitting back here, and I can't tell you that I've participated, but observing the activities and feeling the energy here in South Florida, and I know that our folks in Atlanta go down as well to enjoy Reggae Month. So it's a big thing to go on with Reggae Month. And, I want to ask this question, right? When I was growing up in Jamaica, Christmas time was like the big high vibe time, and it feel like the Reggae Month kind of take over from that. Am I wrong? Am I just a displaced Jamaican who have the wrong impression? And it's okay to tell me wrong,
No, I tell you what, it's hard to beat Christmas in Jamaica, but Reggae Month is doing a great job of rivaling it. I can tell you that much. I don't know if I'd put it over it as yet, but it's really close. It's really close.
Because it seemed like this is that very high festive energy in the month of February, and like you said, the luminaries. It's part of the kind of our whole history as well, and our foundation. Good stuff.
Yeah, man, it's certainly exciting times. For instance, we at Jaria, we do about 20 events in the space of 28 days for Reggae Month. So that gives you an idea of the scope of events and activities happening, and that goes from stage shows, free concerts, educational forums, symposiums, the honor awards. So it's a wide variety of edutainment that we provide for the month, and something for everybody. People of all ages, and even if you didn't have reggae as your number one, when you get some of the vibes during Reggae Month, I'm sure that it will start moving up the ladder for you.
Oh, please. Who don't have reggae as their number one? Okay, cut this short now. No.
And for the listeners, I want to be clear. When we say reggae, we're not distinguishing between traditional roots reggae and dancehall. We support both sides of the industry, and we're using it as a term that coins Jamaican music on a whole. So Reggae Month celebrates Mentos, Ska, dancehall, reggae, roots reggae. It's about Jamaican culture, Jamaican music, so we're not about any kind of separation or division in the music. It's a celebration of Jamaican music and culture. Some of the best performances at Reggae Month events have come from dancehall acts. And we celebrate dancehall acts at our honor awards. Bounty Killer, for instance, was a recent awardee, for his work in mentorship within the industry. So it's certainly something for everybody.
Absolutely. I see that calendar, and I'm like, how them pull all of this off? I mean, so many activities, so many events, and every day I get up, I'm like, I should just fly in today for this,
Not much sleep. I can tell you that part.
I believe it. I believe it's an exciting time. So, as chair, moving forward for 2020, and like you mentioned, Jamaica or Kingston has received high honors from UNESCO and so on. So, I'm believing, and I'm not talking for anybody, but maybe it's going to be a big thing going on for 2020. What's the vision of the committee, Abishai? And what do we think? Anything you can tell us that's particularly exciting that's in the works for 2020 February?
Well, for sure, lots of things in the works for 2020. We're aiming to come back with a full program of Reggae Wednesday concerts, for instance. But outside of that, we're also excited about the Jamaica Music Conference, for instance, joining the February calendar. In previous years, they have normally had their event in November. They have now decided that they will go in Reggae Month. So we'll now have the Jamaica Music Conference happening during Reggae Month. So we're very excited about that addition to the calendar. We're also excited about deepening the relationship with the relevant ministries as they play a greater role in executing the Reggae Month campaign and helping to get the word out some more, bringing greater resources to the table. So we're excited about that. And we also are aiming to have a much earlier start with some of our promotion and getting things streamlined so that our audiences and the diaspora can get more involved, make their plans early to come in Jamaica for Reggae Month and share in the vibes and the energy.
That sounds fantastic. Tell me a little bit more about the Jamaica Music Conference being part of Reggae Month, if you can.
Well, the Jamaica Music Conference, it's one of the premier events on the Jamaica music industry calendar, if I might say. It's one of the only events that we have locally where industry players, as well as public members of the public with an interest in the music industry can come and network and also see industry players speak on important topics of the day as well as running topics in the industry as we seek to move forward. For instance, I know you and I were talking right before the interview started about things like Jamaica having more of a voice, the Caribbean having more of a voice at music conferences, not only regionally but globally as well. And so things like the Jamaica Music Conference is a part of that process. So we're pleased to have it a part of Reggae Month. We have been courting them for years. Some of their members are also members or past members of Jaria. So we're pleased to see that the time has now come for where both sides see fit to join in Reggae Month, and we're just happy to have them on board, part of the Reggae Month calendar, and we look forward to an even bigger and better Jamaica Music Conference for 2020.
I just in speaking with you and on the messaging that I'm hearing about Jaria, it's about celebration, it's about culture, it's about our history, and I keep hearing collaboration and unity, and I think that is so important, particularly in any business, in any industry, but particularly in our music industry where, you clarified earlier with regards to the reggae and the dance hall and so on, and making it very clear, one love, one unity, one unity, it's our music. And I just want to say salute to Jaria for seeing, having a culture, an organization culture that seems to embrace the celebrations as well as the unity. So good stuff. Now, we're talking about resources, and we were talking about having seats at tables internationally and those types of things. And we were talking about oftentimes in organizations, in countries, in communities, the lack of resources that may be there, and kind of chit-chatting about some possible ways. So let me ask you this. As you're planning Reggae Month, and with that massive calendar that is there a quote-unquote wish list or items and resources that you may need? So, and Atlanta, listen up. If you're in your car, pull over, get your pen and paper, because if you can support this great mission, this great cause, you heard Don say it's a nonprofit organization, bipartisan, non-political. So if you support reggae and you can't come down to Jamaica for Reggae Month, perhaps you can help with their wish list and fulfilling some needs. We certainly want you to come down there and buy some tickets. But if you can't, so Abishai, is there a wish list? Is there a place that people can go and figure out, what you all need, support, whether it's with time, with cash, with money,
Andrea, thanks for giving me the opportunity. For sure, we always need any added resources. As you said, Jaria is a non-profit organization. It's a members organization. And so we need all the resources we can to fund the different programs and committees and activities that we have going for the year. Anyone interested in reaching out and being a part of Jaria, finding out how they can support, you can reach us at jaria.org@gmail.com. That's jaria.org@gmail.com. That way we can pass on any information based on what it is that you're able to give, whether it's a bank account information, wire transfer information for cash, or whether you're a volunteer and you need to know details of time and you can come and give of your time, which we also greatly appreciate, whether it is that you have some input to make with ideas or suggestions that you have for Reggae Month. The best way, or for Jaria, as a matter of fact, the best way to reach us and to start that conversation is jaria.org@gmail.com.
Love it, love it, love it. Jaria.org@gmail.com. Link, Atlanta. And for those of you that are listening online, I know it's in Kentucky and so on, please link up because I know we love reggae everywhere, Jamaican music. Well, it's funny how time flies when you're having fun, Abishai, and I want to thank you, but I would be remiss if I don't ask you, because as you travel the world in your artist management capacity, doing the great work of chairing the committee for Reggae Month, tell us a little about your maybe observation and experiences with the intersection of music, business, and culture, because here on Synergy, we talk about where music, business, and culture synchronize. So what are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting that you ask. Personally, my work within the music is driven by a culture, by a mix of all three. I am a Rastafarian by lifestyle and faith, and so the music that I personally promote and push reflects that, and also in terms of how I have my business principles. And traveling the world, that's not necessarily the common thing that you see, but it does give you, it's more prevalent in reggae music because of the nature of reggae music, and for that we give thanks. And we see the power of Jamaican culture and of Rastafarian culture when we travel the world, and how it influences music and entertainment the world over, and in turn business, So from a personal viewpoint, that a window into it. When we travel on an international scale, we see where Jamaican culture has definitely infiltrated global culture. It's no doubt that Jamaica is a creative powerhouse, a superpower in the world, and by what we contribute, not only in terms of reggae, but our contribution to pop music, to dance culture, to pop culture on a whole. So it just shows we lick about with Talawa. People around the world appreciate us for that. People know that we punch above our weight and respect us for that. And we see though we're as an industry, we ourselves can lift our own standards. So that's a part of the work, That's it.
Good works and good word today from Abishai. We started off our show with Don McDowell. We're talking about Jaria, the Jamaica Association of Reggae Industry. Did I get it right, or am I messing it up?
Jaria, Jamaica Reggae Industry Association.
So Jamaica Reggae Industry Association, y'all, forgive me. And so we're talking about, we've just went through the gamut because they've had a new installation of a new board and enough things going on, especially with Jaria. And Dawn shared with you earlier how you in Atlanta, you here in South Florida that's listening online and around the world, if you want to support reggae music or Jamaican music, Jamaican culture, you can do your membership online as well. And if you have some ideas or resources to share, definitely link up at jaria.org@gmail.com. Abishai Hoilett today, chairperson of Jaria's Reggae Month Committee. Abishai, we give thanks for your time, for your information, and for your sharing. Many, many blessings.
Okay, blessings. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the space and the forum.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. All right, Synergy, that's our time.
All right, blessings.
Synergy, I promised you a fantastic, exciting, funny interview today, or show rather, today. And as you heard from Hoilett Records earlier, I mean, tell me that's not like the art of manifestation. Well, for the second part of our show today, we also have another amazing guest. We have a dynamic world-traveling author, teacher, professor, writer of poetry. I said author already, but I mean, it's just so hard to, you say author and it's like, it doesn't sum up all of who she is. But she's going to share a lot of knowledge and information with us today. And so let me stop beating around the bush. I mentioned her name earlier. And yes, we are here today with none other than the amazing Shonda Buchanan. Shonda, welcome, welcome, welcome to Synergy, where music, business, and culture synchronize.
Thank you so very much. What a fantastic description of me and my work. Thank you. I'm very honored to be on this show. Thank you.
And you're very welcome, and the pleasure is ours. And we told no lies, girl. We told no lies. You got back from Cuba, and I've been watching you and living, La Cuba Loca life vicariously through your IG page. So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Oh, my gosh. It was amazing. So I was a part of the International Poetry Festival in Havana, or as they say, Habana, Cuba. And like literally the day I got in was just, how can I say, you can see that Havana, it's like it's in a time warp, right? The cars are antique cars, the buildings are these colonial structures, but then also it's kind of modern times trying to lay itself on top of Cuba despite the embargo. So the people were amazing, and I could see immediately the first day I got there, I was like, Cuba is the people. Like, the heart of Cuba is the people itself. And they what is the word? They forge on, they soldier on, no matter what. Literally, when people told me, there's music on every corner, and literally, there's music on almost every corner. You hear it coming out of the restaurants or in Old Havana, live music, in the restaurants. There are, like I posted on my IG, this trio, essentially they came up to the top of Hemingway's, the hotel that Hemingway made popular, basically. He's staying on the 5th floor there. And so this beautiful, I don't want to call it Afro-Cuban because it was such a slow, beautiful waltz. So while I was at the top of that hotel, I was drinking my rum and I was smoking my cigar in tribute to Oya, and Santeria culture is popular there. So I had an amazing time as an artist, and then also just as a voyeur, as a traveler, someone who got a chance to actually see Cuban culture up front. So it was an amazing experience.
Wow, that is so wonderful. And You sure shared the highlights and the beauty, and you're fun. We saw that you were having a good time, girl.
You have no idea. I mean, yeah. So even like the 2 times that I read poetry for the festival, the first time I read. So here's the incongruency. I'm reading at UNIAC, which is the Union of Artists in Cuba, and they have this really beautiful old colonial structure, that UNIAC happens out of. So poets were reading, in the morning, and there was a lot of giving of certificates and, recognizing the artists. So when I got a chance to read, there was also construction happening, and there's construction happening all over Cuba. So I was thinking, you know what? It's Cuba. You read. You do what the Cubans do. You just keep reading. So, So I kept seeing that kind of, and I kept saying this to my friend. She was like, I'm laughing because in America, well, or even other places like Europe, or things happen differently. And I kept saying, I'm in Cuba. I'm in Cuba. That's how they do it here. You go with the flow. So I was having a good time.
It sure sounds like that. So, your work has taken you all over, it sounds, and you've done some amazing things and worked with interesting people and been in interesting spaces, and, you also teach. How did this interest in poetry and writing evolve? Where did that come from?
Sis. So I will say it for me, it wasn't even an interest. It was a necessity. To write. It was this. It was the way that I could save myself in a beautifully loud, caustic family. Just kind of establishing my own voice in a family that they weren't writers. The things that happened in my family were, we would more, as opposed to using our words, we, use our fists. And for me, it was like language was the way to create a space or a barrier of protection around me, but at the same time defining who I was. And so my first poem, I think I wrote about maybe 9 or something like that. And which that poem established for me that I could create myself in language. And then I just continued writing, and I wrote a lot of bad poetry. I wrote a lot of bad poetry. I would say maybe at 16 I wrote 2 good poems, but I kept writing. And then about when I was 18, I came to Los Angeles. Oh, my apologies. I'm originally from Kalamazoo, Michigan, born and raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And then when I came of age in my brain, I was like, are you staying in Kalamazoo? Like, Kalamazoo isn't feeding you. And I had a former teacher from a journalism workshop program contact me and say she needed a nanny. And she wanted to buy my ticket to go to Gary, Indiana for the summer, and then she was going to Washington, D.C. And I was like, okay, sure. I don't plan to go to college immediately after high school. Let me do it. So that was 18. I went to D.C., stayed the summer with her, and then she said, hey, I'm going to L.A. Do you want to come to L.A. and watch my kids and be my nanny? And I was like, of course. So I was like this writer, poet, traveler in the wind, and that's how, like, wrote like a migration seed, and that's how I got here. And the whole time just writing about my experiences, being a country girl, coming to the big city, and again, just kind of, figuring it out. So I fell into a group of poets at the World Stage. It's the Anansi Writers Workshop in Leimert Park. And from there, that's when I knew. I said, okay, you have to write harder. You have to write better. You've got to be, these people are not playing. Like, these are revolutionaries. These people have survived the Watts riots, the 1965, Like, you got to come. You got to come.
These are serious poets.
Yes, and they're good folks too. But I was like, "Ooh, up your game, sis, up your game." And that's how it evolved for me. And that's how it evolved.
That is such a beautiful story. I mean, going with the flow, and starting off with creating a space for yourself. So self-love, self-healing, and then going with that flow. And look at where it's kind of just taken you,
Exactly.
I think that's a beautiful story. So tell us a little bit about each of your work so far. I know you have something new, Black Indian, a memoir, but tell us about some of your earlier pieces, Voices from Leimert Park, Who's Afraid of Black Indians, The Redo, and then Equipoise. Am I saying it right?
Yes, Equipoise, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So Voices from Leimert Park, the anthology, was published in 2006, and that was a labor of love. It actually took 4 years to compile. It's a collection of poems from mostly African American, but a couple of Latina poets in Los Angeles. And I tell you, when that book came out, people were just floored and gratified because we had not had the culmination of our voices before like that, and so it's interesting because I see over from that book being published and then over now to my book Black Indian, my memoir coming out in August. It's kind of like we have to champion and triumph ourselves, and each other. I mean, even with this podcast, it's you are giving us an opportunity to share our artistry and to to put our voice out there in the ether. And so that book was an important moment for a lot of the poets published. And it's the same thing for the Redux. Now, it's interesting because the Redux, the second Voices from Leimert Park, was published 10 years later. But it represents the gentrification of Leimert Park and South Central, not South L.A., South Central L.A. So, and they're, trying to relabel it so it's not, quote-unquote, ghetto.
Ghetto,
But it's for ghetto for us. It was just like being a transplant. It's home. It's the place where we felt safe. It's the place where we could create. And as one of my mentors, Kamal Daoud, who is the founder of the Anansi Writers founder of the World Stage, said Leimert Park, or the World Stage, was a place where we deposited our tears. And so that's what the Redux was for. But the Redux, it was interesting because my publisher, Elias Wandimu, who is an Ethiopian former exiled journalist from Ethiopia. You really should have him on your show. But he pulled out the stops for the second anthology. So we had like Angela Rye. She was interviewing us, talking about the importance of Black literature. Congresswoman Barbara Lee was there. We had, I'm blanking on his name, but he's a Christian, a CNN political pundit commentator. So, I mean, literally, it was like everyone was out to celebrate, Black literature and the voices in that book. And I want to, and I said to Elias, we have to continue this energy on. Like, we've got to publish more. And so we do have more books in the works that will celebrate Black literature like that. So, for my book of poetry, my first, it's pretty amazing. It's a feat. It's a fantastic feat. Okay, for me, Who's Afraid of Black Indians was my first book of poetry published in 2012. And so I'll tell you, the title first and foremost came from Virginia Woolf's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And I wanted that formidable, like I wanted the formidable sense of, for Black Indians have African Americans with American Indian roots heritage, blood, stories, oral history, like my family. I wanted to establish a sense of we're here and we're not going away. With that book. And it's really more family poetry. And it's interesting, sometimes people will get the book and they're like, oh, I thought you were going to talk about like other Black Indians. And I'm like, it's a book of poetry, but maybe I'll do that one too. Maybe I'll do a book of poetry talking about how Nina Simone had her, her oral history of her, American Indian grandfather. And like there's so many people, Beyonce, James Earl Jones, Alice Walker, there are lots of Black folks who have that oral history, even if the blood is not there, or if it's been kind of married out, that's another story. So that book of poetry became for me kind of a seminal moment of establishing, for me, and I know other people are writing about it, but just kind of family poetry. And then also the history of the intersections of, and I have a couple of poems that deal with the history of African Americans and American Indians. And I can actually read a poem from that if you want me to.
Absolutely, let's do it.
Okay, let me read a poem.
A live performance on
yes.
Shonda Buchanan. How did we get so blessed, Atlanta? Yes.
Yes. So this is a poem that I wrote for my grandfather, and it talks about how on the census he was a different ethnicity every 10 years. And that's what it was kind of, like for mulattoes or, people who were either biracial or triracial. And it became a sense of if we move, we can claim something different because no one knows us, right? If we move over here, we can be white. But if we move back here, people will know, we're Black and white or Black and Indian. But over here, we can't actually claim our whiteness, so we're only Black and Indian. So, anyway. So this poem traces, talks about my grandfather, a grandfather that I never met. Since 1830, every year on the census, my third great-grandfather disappeared in his skin. First Indian, then mulatto in 1840. In 1850, he was eventually white. What were we? My fourth great-grandfather could have left an easier trail to follow, one of cornbread, drum songs, splintered wagon wheels, anything to locate their breath on the ravaged air. The scent of pokeweed, unpicked cotton, something to wet my finger and test the wind of a 344-year silence all the way back to North Carolina and Virginia. A porous golden map of some kind, a deer bone, a horseshoe that told us how to interpret the dreams we women had, dreams that scared the mess out of us when dead people came to call, when the crystal future unfolded like a horror movie in our dreary heads. But we knew them, the ghosts folding air-dried sheets, clipping wooden pins off a clothing line, walking away with a full basket of my grandfather's wet white bones into mist, into shadow. We will never find him. And so,
Wow, I have goosebumps. I mean, I love your choice of words, and then your voice is also very soothing. Just the imagery, the power of understanding the getting lost in your own skin every 10 years, and then the legacy of that. I mean, wow, like wow.
Yes, yeah.
Amazing. Really have captured the essence of those experiences, and I sat back while you were talking and had my eyes closed, and I could see it, I could see it. I could see the and the clipping of the pins and the clotheslines. I mean, you took me there, my dear. Your writing actually took me there, and I thank you so much for sharing that. Atlanta, we're giving her a round of applause. If you're driving, don't take those hands off the wheel. Okay, don't take those hands off the wheel.
Right.
Drive safely. So, Shonda, wow, I'm just simply.
I mean, it's a place of.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, it's a place where a lot of us kind of exist in that with two, with one foot on either side, or we don't have 3 feet, but we're still, kind of, researching and finding and hearing about our ancestors who were, on that migration trail, how, former slaves bought themselves out of slavery, how they were on the Underground Railroad. I mean, there's so much rich history that we don't know, we don't get taught in school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I know it happens around the world, which is why when I'm traveling, when I was in Cuba, it was funny because I had a thought. I was like, oh snap, let me start taking pictures of my postcard, my book postcard, Black Indian, in Cuba, because there is indigenous ancestry here. There are indigenous. It's one of my guides said that there are no more Aborigines, as they call them, and I was like, no, that's not true. That blood is here, and so I think I want to, and I am going to actually be talking about how, in terms of indigenous or indigeneity is what a lot of American Indians or North American Indians are calling it. The sense of that we exist in a plurality. We are here, and we're not. The blood does not lie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
blood does not lie. Our stories might get a little mixed up, and maybe some people don't have the blood. Maybe they don't have it, but if they do, and you get your DNA test and you see you have that 0.2%, which is what at 0.02%, and my mom has 0.04%, but I know them because I've researched them. The blood does not lie.
Amazing. So you have a new work coming out in a couple of months, Black Indian, a memoir. Tell us about that, and what should we expect from that release?
Yeah. So this book, I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud. So at the same time, I'll stay with proud first. This book is about my family. This book is about my mother and her sisters growing up, these beautiful mulatto fairies on a farm in Mattawan, Michigan, with a grandfather who was, my grandfather was a father who was an alcoholic, a mother who was this passive-aggressive, non-protector, unprotector, and just kind of how their lives were, the meter of their lives, or the metronome of their lives, were men. And, first they were with their father, and then to escape the father, they got married, and they married young. They had kids young, just a lot of, uncertainty in their lives. And, each of my mom and my aunts were all abused women. I think my mom is the only one who wasn't addicted to anything except bingo and gambling. But at the same time, our lives were just like resilient. We survived it and we laughed. Oh my gosh, our sense of humor is just like, like all, Black folks who have survived trauma. We you know what I mean? We just.
I do. In Jamaica, we say you take bad things, make laugh. You take the bad and you turn it into a joke because you got to. How else do you survive? You know what I mean? Laughter is the best medicine, and if you're gonna get your psyche right, hey, a good joke will help. I do.
That's it. And so, but at the same time, I'm talking about how, how our ancestry became the thing that, because we didn't know it purposefully, the people who escaped the South, like our family who left, I have some Roberts, some Manuels, some Staffords. Staffords are from the Hertford County, North Carolina. My Manuels, Sampson County, North Carolina. My Roberts, Greenville and Northampton, Virginia. And when the miscegenation laws of you can't marry this person, black people can't marry whites. If a white person marries a black person, you'll be fined, or you'll have to pay tax on them, and like this is history. So when the Nat Turner Rebellion came through in 1831, my people kind of looked at each other and agreed. They were like, we need to get the hell up out of here because, they're tightening the reins. We own property. My people were farmers. They owned property. They would call themselves free people of color. But the laws were, like, getting tighter and tighter. They were saying free people of color can't own arms. And it was like, what? Or you can't walk around with your arms. And it's like, they're farmers. They're like hunters. How can you not have arms? What is that about? So, or guns, what is that about? So they packed up. They got on that trail. There are multiple trails, the highway, the King's Highway Trail, the Appalachian Trail. There are a couple of other trails. And they just migrated. They went first to, Tennessee, and then Kentucky, and then Indiana, where they established some of the first free people of color settlements in Indiana. And then down to my predecessor, my great-great-great-grandfather from the Roberts side, went to Michigan and established, that Roberts established some of the first free people of color farmlands or homesteads out there, and the same for my Staffords. So my book blends family history with actual history of the Black Indian intersection. And again, I know people are going to say, I thought you were going to talk about, the actual history of, I do have it in my book, but the 5 civilized tribes who owned black slaves, and and I do talk about that. Even the first chapter, I actually have a paragraph that deals with the Trail of Tears and how the black slaves were on that trail, and they died, with American Indians on that trail. So for me, this book is a prayer. It's a book that talks about how we survived historically and as women. That's what that book is. This is what that book is about for me.
Wow. That sounds so wonderful. We cannot wait for it to be released, and I believe you can pre-order it now, right?
You can. It releases August 26th. You can pre-order it on Amazon. You can pre-order it on my website, which will link you to Amazon. You can click through. You can order it on my press's page, Wayne State University. And I am coming to Atlanta to give a couple of readings. November 8th and 9th, I believe, is when I'm supposed to read at the Atlanta University Center. Is that what it's called? Yes, and then also
exciting, Shonda. So you'll have to definitely share that information with us a little bit closer to the date, so we can also share with our listeners again. But mark the date, Atlanta. She's coming in November, and the book releases on August 26th. Shonda, our time is winding down, but I want to funny how time flies when you're having fun. So let me ask you two things. One, you're doing some work regarding Nina Simone, who you mentioned earlier, and that just is intriguing to me. Tell us just a little bit about it. What are you doing?
I'm writing a collection of poetry about Nina Simone.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
We're looking out for that one too.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, hopefully it'll be. It's not out yet. I don't have a publisher as of yet, and I'm hoping to be finished with it by the end of summer, and then submitting it to publishers by the end of summer.
Awesome. Good stuff. So we will stay tuned for that work as well. And so, we talked a little bit about your trip to Cuba. Your work definitely takes you all over, and you're traveling. And in your global experiences, because, of course, we've got to ask the question about the intersectionality of music, business, and culture. What do you see? What's been your experience with, again, what I like to say, the synchronicity, music, business, and culture?
Yeah, everywhere I go as a poet, I'll give the example of Malaysia. Even when we're reading poetry or giving a lecture, the music or the musicality was always kind of the undergirding. And it's interesting because for an artist myself, I think of it culturally, but because I am an artist who is selling my book and they're musicians who are getting paid for their music, we never think about the fact that we're actually entrepreneurs. You know, we're business people, right?
Yes, you are.
Right? So we do it for the love of it, but it's also our livelihood. And so I saw musicians being brought in between the readings in Malaysia. In between our readings in Cuba, there was always music, like Afro-Cuban, mariachi. I mean, always that. And, what other places that I've read and been? I would say I didn't read in Senegal, but the music was definitely a part of the cultural, scene. And I didn't meet with any of the people who were promoters or anything along those lines. But music it's just everywhere. And now that I'm thinking about it, I probably should start asking the musicians, do you think you're an entrepreneur? Like, do you think that you are someone who is a business person? I should start asking that, actually.
Good question. Yeah, very good question. I think that's wonderful. And yes, I like to say music is life. It is the underpinning, I believe, of so much of our thoughts and our actions and so on. Shonda, it has been a pleasure having you here, hearing of your rich experiences, your family's history, and thank you so much for sharing and illuminating a huge part of the Black American experience for many, and with such gracious words. And thank you for sharing that beautiful poem with our listeners today.
Thank you so very much.
How to stay connected with you? Is there a website that they can go to? And what?
Yes. My website, www.shondabuchanan.com, SHOND as in David, A, B as in boy, UCHANAN.com. And then my email is my first and last name, Shonda Buchanan at AOL. That's the one I check most often. And then I also have Shonda Buchanan at Gmail. So I'd love to hear from any of your listeners. And then also if anyone wants to bring me to do a lecture, a reading, I sing, when I do my readings. So that's my intersection with music and art and poetry. I do, because it's the same for me, prayer and poetry. At any rate, that's how they can contact me. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. And that's our time today on Synergy, where music, business, and culture synchronize. An amazing show with Rao of Hoilett Records, as well as Shonda Buchanan. Thank you for tuning in. We will catch you next time.